Happy holidays, everyone. Welcome back to the second episode of Teens for Business. This week, we'll be talking about high schoolers and jobs, specifically how we've had these experiences in our lives and what we've seen from our surroundings. Just to give some overall information, with like statistics, just under 30% of teens from ages 16 to 19 have had jobs in 2020, but this number has actually decreased from 2000, which is an interesting thing actually. So for you guys, like have you guys had any personal experiences like internships, working, just anything that could be classified as work?
Uh, I think I'll just start with this. So, personally, I don't like at my school and where I live. Not a lot of people have jobs simply because I think of our academic environments, stuff like that. There's definitely a few people who do have jobs, but they only take it when like they're in senior year or like when they have nothing much else to do. Um, so that's like the only circumstance I know of people getting jobs. But I think it's just because of where I live. I'm probably like everyone else knows people will have jobs starting in high school, but where I am, not much. But a lot of people do have internships. I don't know if they're probably definitely not doing it for the money though. I think it's more of like the experience and like the knowledge that it comes with the internship and yeah, and kind of like that from my point of view.
For me, I do have a job, but it's not like a typical minimum wage job at like a restaurant or something. I coach basketball. It's like every week around two days, each day for maybe 90 minutes each. It doesn't really affect like academic wise. I still it's like very it has very little effect on my commitment because it's only like 3 hours every week, so it's like a small time commitment, in my opinion.
In my school in Illinois, I definitely know a lot of people who do have jobs in like Jewel Osco. Some people work at a restaurant. I also know a good amount of people who do internships at. I know one of my friends does an internship at uh Iowa State University for a machine learning thing. So um I think it I think like the amount of people who like do like internships and jobs really like depends on your location. And based off of what I've seen and what I've discussed with my friends, it seems like it doesn't really affect uh acad- them academically. It just takes a lot of more a little bit of time out of your day, but for for them it's still very good experience and it's very valuable.
Yeah, that's interesting because where I live, I don't really know a lot of people who have like service jobs or like jobs that they take on for the money. I know like a lot of people have like internships or like jobs for the experience, not so much for the money. For example, like working at some real estate company because they want to do business in the future or something like that to gather experience and just to know a little bit about the field. But I think that's interesting because I feel like there's this debate about like having a job because having a job takes time, whether it's like 1 hour each week or like 10 hours each week. Not like that's still time that you take out. You could be doing homework, you could be doing like extracurriculars. And I know like besides Kaiwen, but I think all of you guys, Jack and Ivan, you said you didn't have jobs. So like would you guys want a job or is that just like a I've thought about this before and I'm just sticking with my no jobs kind of
Well,
thing?
I mean, I do have an internship, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Mhm.
like not for the money. It's like since I'm like kind of like a STEM guy, you know, like I like working with like code stuff like that. So, um like getting an internship is more like, oh, it's like exploring different new like I'm learning so much at school, like
Mhm.
math progression, like algebra, whatever, calculus, whatever. And I'm like, okay, then what do I do with this, right? And then like getting interested, be like, oh, okay, I'm applying what I've learned at school to a real product now, right? Well, maybe not the math level, but definitely like problem solving, kind of those stuff. Like it
Like
comes
comp
with
sci?
Yeah, comp sci, but comp sci is
Mhm.
mostly studying by myself, but like other things, right? And then like it's like kind of satisfying to see like, okay, like I learned this thing at school, I understand it, and then now I'm going to a real environment and just seeing how those will actually make a product that, you know, may have an impact on the world. So
Mhm.
that's why I think like sometimes even though jobs may take a long time, like I go there like 4 or 5 hours per week. It's not a long time. It's as much as my schedule allows me to, but like I go there and then I don't see like I think it's a worthy sacrifice, you know? It's like kind of satisfying to apply the knowledge I already have to something in the real world.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, because you're in California, right? So like, do you think location um factors into like your internship experience? Because I know you're like really close to Silicon
Yeah,
Valley and all of the companies, as compared to like somewhere in like the Midwest where you
definitely.
might not have that.
Definitely like everybody I know is like doing some sort of STEM related internship, whatever. You're like, oh, I founded this nonprofit or like something like that. And then like the competition definitely gets intense. Like
Yeah.
people I think more and more so now are getting internships because everyone else is getting them and then they don't actually like what they're doing, right? Which is a big problem, right? You don't want to get into something that you don't want to do or like you're forced into it, right? Um, so I think that's probably one of the biggest problems where I live when high schoolers get like jobs or internships because they're like kind of forced into it, maybe by their parents who think of it a way to get into college. That's like most of the people I know is definitely like college, right? Um, so that's like the biggest problem. Like you want
Yeah.
to love something you do, not like, get forced into it.
You know, that's fair. Kaiwen, I know you're also in California. Is that like the same for your school as well?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I know everyone's pretty much doing like, they're doing everything they're doing in high school, like building resumes and stuff. It's
Yeah.
for college, and like, I'm not sure about. I know a lot of people just do get jobs simply for the money, but I would agree. Like, majority of people are like they're focusing on like college applications, whether that's their own passion, they want to get into a good college, or like their parents trying to force them to do something. I know
Uh-huh.
that's the main reason that people do seek out like internships and jobs and things like that.
Yeah. Um, Jack, you have to help me out here, like from being non-Californians. Um, what about you? Like, is that something
Oh
you
yeah,
see?
for sure. Yeah, I see like a lot of people are like it's mostly been internships in their field, their potential field of study that people in our area take internships and jobs for, but definitely I feel definitely to a lesser extent than in California because um I feel like the competition in our area is a little bit less than it would be if I were also in California. And I feel like the motivations are the same. Like college apps, they're obviously like huge for like people who like do internships and they definitely want to get like their experience. I mean, like also I feel like internships is also a way to like see if like, oh, this is a career path that I like, or maybe this is after trying it saying, oh, maybe I shouldn't pursue this. And like it's a good opportunity. And definitely I feel like competition definitely plays a role.
Yeah. Um, I mean, we've been talking about like internships a lot. And so Ivan, and I know you said you had an internship, and then we can all relate to the people around us having internships. I think there's like this debate also about like the paid versus unpaid internships. So there's an argument that like unpaid internships are like really bad and it's very like exploitative on the student. But there's also an argument that says like, hey, if it's done correctly, it can be a very valuable experience for the student. And it enables the companies to give out the experience without having like anything to hurt them. What are your takes on like having paid and unpaid internships? Is it bad necessarily or
Well, okay, so um I think most of the time paid internships are to provide like from where I am, I'm a I'm unpaid, obviously, but like I know like big companies, big tech companies like Amazon, companies like that, they pay their interns like a lot, mainly because they want them to come back after college to work full time. Um, it's obviously harder to get paid internships, but like most of the time, the money is an incentive to make people come back. So I mean, unpaid internships are mostly like those smaller startups, or like they're paid, but like they're very little, because when you're working at these startups, you're not like thinking about money. You're thinking about what you're making, right? Like startup, you're very being at a startup, you're very close to where your product is, because it's like you and like maybe like five other guys like working on one product. But like in a big company, you kind of have like that distance, you know, you're working on this small part of this massive product. So I think money would be a bigger factor there in that case. But I think both are definitely have their own pros, right? Not necessarily cons, but maybe pros. Like if you're working on a startup and you're taking a non-paid internship or like a paying internship with a very low wage, you're like accepting the fact that you're there not for the money but for what you're doing, and like getting experience to open new doors in the future. That's my take.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then also I guess like paid internships, do you think there's a difference with like college students versus high schoolers? Because I think
Yeah.
from what I've seen, like being a college student is, more, it's easier to get like a paid internship because companies are more willing to give it to you.
Yeah, college students definitely need the money, right? Because more and more college students are becoming more financially independent. Like high schoolers, you can't be financially independent, so non-paid internship are fine. But college students definitely will probably should take paid internships. But like that's when like stuff like startups and Amazon's paying like what, like a couple hundred per hour, I think, for some interns, and they like pay for their housing, and then like, well, startups, they pay like barely above minimum wage simply because they can't afford it, and also like the interns aren't working there especially for the money, you know?
$100 or a couple $100 an
Yeah, it's
hour.
insane. It's
Oh my
insane.
God,
And they
Ivan, you
like
should
pay
sign
for
me up for
everything.
that.
Yeah, but it's
Oh
like
my
I think it's really
God.
hard to get into. That's why. Like when they want you, they pay you this much, they know like, okay, I know I want this person. I want them to come back. So they're willing to make that sacrifice,
That's
you know?
fair. That's fair.
I'm also curious, like, being from the Bay Area, STEM is our entire lives. It's but like I know like Jack and Jackie, you're both from in like closer to the East Coast where everything is a little bit more dense, So how do you guys feel about like maybe like, there isn't much internships, I'm not too sure, but like there are a lot more, it's like a whole different academic environment there. So like how do you think that impacts kind of the jobs and internships?
Yeah, that's interesting. Jack, do you want to go?
Uh, okay, so this is actually funny because one of my friends, well, someone I know actually has an internship in Silicon Valley, and some of the others I know also have internships. Like, I mean, not really close to Chicago, which is like the area, but like around more of the like the suburbs. So based on experience, I feel like a lot of actually my area is like some people do STEM related internships, some people do other related internships related to research. So actually, there's like I'm not too sure actually.
Oh yeah, no, honestly, because I'm in Maryland, so DC, woo, go DC. No, but it's kind of funny because, well, I go to like a STEM magnet program, so like within the program, it's like very obviously STEM centered, but outside of the program and like with my home schools and just like the other schools in the area, it's like very kind of diverse in what people want to do. It's like there's a lot of people who want to do humanities, but then there's also a lot like who want to be comp sci people or want to be like engineers. But I will say like because of our proximity to DC, there's like a bunch of like programs in DC that are related to like law or like activism or things related to that core. And then people would like try to go there. And then I think that's interesting because the same way how it's like Silicon Valley is in California, so a lot of people kind of gravitate towards that versus being in Maryland with like DC so close and people gravitating towards like the federal programs or things like that. But yeah, that's interesting because yeah, that's funny.
I'd
Yeah,
like
I know
to
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to add on to that. Like, it's like the same scenario in my school. Like, there's like a good mix of humanities and STEM people. And actually, I think most of our students in our school who want to look to internships, they look towards research opportunities at universities and like summer programs. So it's definitely the case here. And I think in Chicago there are like a lot of opportunities, but for I don't know, for some reason like some people students in our area don't take them, so I'm not sure why.
Yeah, like uh it's like I don't think I don't like everybody around me takes STEM as like their only job. I have rarely seen, I know like maybe one person who dabbles into activism, but not a
Dabbles
lot.
into.
Yeah, like not a lot. It's everything is so STEM based. It's interesting, right? Like in the East Coast, I know like it's so diverse. You have like every like big cities in close proximities. Like you have like New York and then you have
Yeah.
DC, right? There's like so many different things than STEM. But like over here in like the West Coast, like it's just the Bay Area and then you have LA. Right?
And then
It's
there's
not too diverse.
yeah, and then there's Chicago, which is in the middle of a farmland. So
I mean, it's Chicago. Like, it's Chicago's in of itself a very
yeah,
unique place.
yeah, it's just like its own like community. Maybe it can connect with Milwaukee a little bit, but nothing else really.
Yeah, but you know how like in movies and stuff, um, like people like high schoolers get paid by like babysitting or mowing lawns,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like over here on the West Coast, I think Kaiwan can agree. Like nobody really does that anymore. I'm not too sure
Yeah.
if it's the case. Like Kaiwan, you can agree, right?
Yeah,
What's
yeah.
it? Yeah,
Nobody really
so
does that stuff. Yeah.
it's mostly like sports. I think a lot of people do like sports coaching, but like none of the movie kind of stuff. So how about on the East Coast? I think that would be more of a case. But
I think that's interesting because like from my experience, like at in high school, I don't really know a lot of my friends who do like mowing lawns or babysitting or anything like that. But I will say like middle school times, I think there were more people who kind of did that as like the elementary entry level
I think
to like
for
having an actual. Yeah.
yeah, for middle schoolers it's just like whatever they're doing is just simply for experience, or their
Yeah.
parents want them to experience something, just like their first job or whatever. But in high school, like but like time is more and more valuable. You would rather be doing something like that, either like gives you like actual real world experience, as in like these internships that you're taking, or like if you're doing a job, it's something that you actually enjoy doing, or the pay is
yeah,
good or something. Yeah.
Yep. That's also the experience I experienced here in Chicago. Actually, aside from like coaching basketball teams, coaching football teams, or being assistant, I those are those are like more middle school or elementary school jobs. So like gain like a first experience and first insight into what jobs are like, and maybe if they want to do jobs in the future, they go sign up for jobs at like Jewel Osco or whatever.
talking
Yeah.
about this, yeah, I think I'm kind of more curious about like do you guys think that like the movie portrayal of like a high school student's working life is it accurate anymore? But like I think it's definitely not accurate. It's definitely romanticized. Like I'm not too sure, but because of our environment, well, the environment I'm in, I don't think it's that that accurate anymore.
You
Simply
know,
because like our focus has changed.
I mean, I think like when I think a lot about like the movie versions, like when you really think about it, all the movies I remember that are like centered around having a job or like have the job as like some plot point, they're all like movies from 10 years ago. They're all like
Yeah.
2000s movies. They're all
Yep.
like, fun a long time ago. And I think like at that time, it was probably true. just because like 10 years, 20 years actually, I guess, 20 years ago, like we didn't have like as much tech as we do now. It wasn't like as developed. There were no just like iPhone 14s lying around for fun. So I think like for that time period, it probably was like relatively okay, but like comparing that like romanticized 2000s version to like 2022, almost 2023, I think there's definitely a disconnect there. But yeah, I think, oh my God, you know those like movies with like the poolside jobs? Like what are they called?
Oh, wait, like
Lifeguards.
lifeguards? Yeah.
Lifeguard.
I
I
just
mean, do
forgot
you, I know like high schoolers here
who,
do like
yeah,
lifeguards. Like it's
Yeah.
really rare. It's a summer job, right?
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a summer job.
It's more of a
But like,
summer job. Maybe could go into spring job. I actually have a bunch of friends who do lifeguard. They're mostly on the swimming or diving team, but like I think it's a good experience for them. Also, like because they in sometimes they're in the water for the sport, so it could also like give them a little bit more experience there.
Yeah. Um, that's interesting because for me, I have like a friend who like does lifeguarding all year round, which is kind of interesting. Like for indoor pools. And it's kind of fun how like a lot of the lifeguard people, at least in my area, like they're not on the swim or dive team at schools. I think they just do it because like for fun and like for the money, which is kind of an interesting contrast to what we've been talking about. Um, so yeah, that's interesting.
I think
Oh
we
yeah,
should
and then
also like consider that our scope is really limited, right? And then I know like Kaiwan and I go to private schools in the Bay Area, and I think that made us kind of live under a rock, kind of. So I know like since Jack, you go to magnet program, like I think you're a bit closer to not living under a rock.
um,
Like have you ever seen any experiences that like relate
I mean,
to kind of these jobs for the money, you know?
I mean, it's kind of interesting because the way I know like magnet programs all over the country work differently. Like I go to Blair, like which is a magnet program in Maryland, but then you look to like the next state over, like Thomas Jefferson High School, and like their magnet, the way it works is like really different from the way our magnet works, even though they're like both technically STEM magnet programs. And like our school, it's like one magnet program within a really big school. Funny enough, like my school is actually like the largest public school in Maryland, which is really big. Um, but then like the magnet itself is maybe like 100 people per class. So it's kind of like you get to see this like bigger environment. And then I think like because we have like 3,500 people in total, just like the
That's
entire
crazy.
school.
Yeah,
Right? No, it's like insane. Which is like a lot, but that's like counting everyone and all the programs we have. And so I think like outside of the magnet is very focused on like, hey, let me go do research, or like, hey, let me go have internships for the sake of having that internship or for the sake of having experience. But I think outside of the magnet program, I know a lot of people like who have jobs for money or for like non-college reasons. So like you know how like the midterms, not midterms, or I mean, yeah, I guess midterms, like the elections on November 8th, there were like a bunch of local ones here, and I know a lot of students like helped out with like local candidates, like the Board of Education, and I think there's like county councils going on, and I think a lot of people actually helped out with those. And I think that was honestly because for like their own like political beliefs versus being like, oh my God, hey guys, it's so cool I get to volunteer for this. But yeah, speaking of like volunteering for political candidates, is that something that happens in your areas too, or is it very like
Oh yeah, it
focused?
definitely does, but not a lot of people do it surprisingly. Um, but yeah, like there's often opportunities. They're like, oh, volunteer for this. Or, like there was also this opportunity to like work as an intern for one of the congressmen that was going to be elected, something like that. But not a lot of people take it. I think it's because it's not their focus. But like I go to a STEM school, so but I know Kaiwan, he doesn't go to like that STEM of his kind of school. I think his experience might be a little bit different on this kind of
Like
perspective.
my school, we actually have like a club called MAP is like committed to like social justice and stuff, and like people I know they like email Congress people, and they and legislators, and they try to like do that type of thing. Like there's a lot of like I'm not sure what we would call it, like activism, and like it's actually pretty big in our school. So that's just like from my experience. I know a lot of people care about that type of stuff.
Uh-huh.
In
And
my
like,
school, definitely it's something pretty big. I have two friends who invited government people to actually come to our school and like speak on like for their clubs. One of them is a representative, and one of them is like she was an electoral candidate who used to attend her school. Like she got elected in the midterm elections, so good for her. And but like definitely if in my school at least for people who like really want to pursue like that like political or policy in their future, they definitely get into it. And to be honest, I almost got recruited into one of these like internships and helping one of these politicians.
oh, that's cool. What do you
Yeah.
mean you almost got recruited into it?
So my friend like he has a job like what the politician told him to do was like to like knock on doors and like promote their campaign.
Yeah.
And he was like really passionate about working for this politician, and he almost dragged me into it. So it was pretty fun.
Uh-huh. Like, is that like looking back at it, is it something you would be like, oh, that actually sounds cool now? Or is it something like you're still like, that's not really for me?
I think it depends. Like, I mean, initially when I like heard it, and I still hold this belief now, I feel that it is very cool. But I feel like for me, I'm like a little bit too busy based on like a lot of the things that I do outside of school. And plus, I don't really. I think like law and like policy are not like something that I want to like pursue in the future. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, well, this is actually interesting. So, we all know like high school is only 4 years, and like that might sound like a lot, but as we get closer to being like seniors, it's actually not that. Like 4 years, it's not that much, especially considering how like for me, our first year was kind of just like COVID year, and I don't know what your schools did, but it was all like very just online. No one really
Yep.
knew what they were doing. It was like, okay. But then going back to like internships or like jobs, like say you, I don't know if you guys can relate to this, but I mean, I can't, but I'm just thinking of it. It's like if you had an internship for the experience and you were like, oh, I like say you really wanted to do finance and then you got like a financial internship, but then you were like, oh, I don't, this is kind of hard, or like I don't like it, or it's like too boring or whatever. Would you say like that internship would be like looking back on that internship, would it be like a waste, or would you consider it to be like, oh, you know what, that's a good learning experience of what I don't want to do?
I think definitely it wouldn't be a waste. I mean, you're still finding. I mean, if you're in high school, you're still finding out what you're trying to do in the future. So if you realize that, like, from like at an early age, that that's like not something that you want to do, then that could be even better than, like liking it initially. So you like kind of you kind of figure out like I definitely know I don't want to do that in the future. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's
Yeah, I
fair.
think
Like,
it's more of a case like I know like a lot of people want to become doctors and then they go like do a medical intern and see blood and you're like, nah, you
ooh.
know? Like I
Yeah.
think it's more important for other fields than certain fields. Like for STEM, you're like you kind of know already. Like it's gonna be electronics, it's gonna be coding. I think I can experience that already. But like for like those more hands-on things, like you don't actually know until you go and experience it, you know? So I think it's definitely very important as a learning experience. Even like the money is just like a bonus, you know? That's for students I'm not too sure about students to
Yeah.
want to work for the money. I think there definitely exists, right? So
Yeah, no, definitely.
yeah.
Um, no, but I think like what Kaiwen said, like saves you from the future. And I was just thinking like having that experience probably could be like a really beneficial thing down the line. So like 20 years into your career, you're not like, oh, actually, this is a bad idea. Like it saves you from all the time and energy.
Yeah.
I mean, 20 years obviously is like an exaggeration, but like your
Yeah.
second year in college, you're like, oh, wait, actually, I don't like this. So I guess like it really does like save a lot of time and energy and money for that.
Yeah, I want to add on to that. High school is like primarily the time where like you like try to like explore what you want to do next in life, what do you want to like major in life. And colleges, obviously, like if in some colleges you can like change your major if you like don't like something. Like in high school, it's like the time to like really like experience and like branch out and like get out of living under a rock, I guess, from like all the different job opportunities there. And I feel like it's very important to like figure out, oh, I like this, I like that. And if you like something, maybe want to experience it first. Like to be honest, I used to like want to really do STEM, but after like doing like something related to STEM, like I'm like, nope, I'm out. I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah. That's interesting. So we have Ivan who's like very into STEM, and then you're like, no.
Yeah, I'm like more into humanities. I mean, business sort of is considered a little bit STEM, but also like not really. And so is econ. Econ is actually for most colleges in the humanitarian like district and like their like in like their like courses and stuff. It's like a little bit separate from STEM. So
Oh, yeah, no, that's interesting. I think that's like a really good topic we can maybe talk about next time. I think that's pretty interesting. So I think general takeaways from this time is that like we all have different experiences, and what I've really just noticed from this conversation is that like location is so much more important than I thought it was. Not just like location in terms of like where you are in your county, if you're like in a more affluent area or not, but location as in like what you're close to, I think is really important. Like me being near DC, and then Ivan and Kaiwan being near like Silicon Valley and like California. Yeah, I think that's something I think is really interesting to consider.
Yeah, just to add on, I also like think from this discussion is that like taking a job or internship, if you're doing it for the money, then do it for the money. But like for our cases, it's definitely not the money. So when it's not for the money, I definitely think it should be taken as a learning opportunity and do something as like if you don't want to do internship, don't force yourself to do internship. Like you have to do it because you like the thing you're doing and you want to have that learning opportunity and you're willing to make that sacrifice and that time you can be spent doing elsewhere.
Yeah. Jack and Kaiwan, do you guys have any like takeaways from this time or anything you thought was really interesting?
okay, yeah, basically Ivan and Jackie basically said basically a majority of what I was gonna say. Like location really does like matter, and also like again like also that like I feel like the people you're around also like really matters because they can like influence like what you can do. Like for example, I almost like got into that like working into a politician thing. So like it definitely matters. That's
Yeah, like
Mhm.
location, who you're with, just your environment.
yeah, for sure.
I think
Um,
it's interesting how like since 2000, the percentage of teens working summer jobs has fallen from like 51% to 30%. Do you guys think, I was like, do you guys think this trend is gonna continue? Like, do you think jobs are gonna continue? Like, I mean, the number of teens like having summer jobs are they gonna continue to fall for maybe other things like summer programs or summer internships and things like that?
I feel like that's been the trend as technology has been developing, and I feel like technology is definitely going to get like more advanced over the next decade. So I could definitely see that trend happening. Like, I could definitely see some job like a teenage job like decreasing and more people focusing on summer programs, internships, and other things that they can use to pursue their careers.
Yeah,
yeah,
I personally think I think like percentage of teens as the world keeps on progressing, I think people are working less summer jobs but more like jobs year round. And then the people who are usually taking those summer jobs are finding more opportunities elsewhere, right? But the people who want to work jobs will do it year round more so.
yeah, I think that's actually a pretty good point in like the type of jobs that people take. But yeah, I think that's it for this time. Thank you so much to everyone who's listening. We'll be back next year, 2023, for our third episode of the podcast. Thank you so much for listening to Teens for Business, and we'll see you next time.